weird tales and wondrous beasts. It's time for the best Lovecraftian games you can play on PC. H.P. Lovecraft is famous for his works of science fiction and psychological horror. His stories are full of doomed towns and cosmic horrors that can send you mad as soon as you look at them. Lovecraft himself was a problematic character, but we can still appreciate his work as a precursor to modern horror and odd fiction. So with all that in mind and a love of creepy tales and Lovecraft stories, we put together a list of some of the best Lovecraftian games that you can play on PC. Anything that feels like it could have made its way into the Necronomicon counts. If you're after something calming or less tentacly after this list, you can find all that and more by subscribing to the Logitech G channel. But for now though, here are some Lovecraftian games you can play on PC.
Okay, let's see what we have here.
The release of Call of the Sea gave us the idea for this whole video. A 1930s expedition with mystery and darkness at its heart is like it got up off the pages of the Necronomicon and swam straight onto your screen. It's set in the South Pacific on a tropical island so beautiful you can't help but look around in awe. Which is handy, as this is a puzzle game all about picking up clues as you go, so noticing details is key. Although if you're like me, this may take some time as you aimlessly chase parrots for a while. But even with me playing, I still felt Nora's spirit and confidence shine through as she gave helpful quips and dared to venture onwards even when I started to get nervous.
Looks like some of the crew members didn't get along too well.
It couldn't be all sunshines and waterfalls to get onto a Lovecraftian list. You'll find prophetic dreams, occult puzzles, and creatures lurking in the depths. There are many horrors to discover in Call of the Sea. Carrion is something that would have sat snugly between a couple of Lovecraft's other stories in a pulp magazine. This sci-fi indie is a reverse horror, where you're the creature that breaks out of the lab and decides to go feral. You can chomp on humans, break down doors, and lurk in vents as you please. Your goal is merely to break out of the facility you're held in, using all the tentacle means at your disposal, which includes upgrades such as horrid sticky webs. Oh dear human, looks like you're mine now. For fans of Lovecraft who take the time to think beyond which person they want to munch next, it might even conjure ideas of Shoggoth, an equally tentacled and famous blob with a mass of teeth. It's clearly a very different story with no Elder One in sight, but Carrion still definitely has influences from the master of horror himself. One thing Lovecraft understood about protagonists in a horror story is psychological stress, and one game that explores that incredibly well is Darkest Dungeon. Both HP and Red Hook Studios know that meeting eldritch beings and witnessing dark and deadly events takes a bit of a toll on your mental well-being. Darkest Dungeon's adventurers have a huge range of jobs and skills, but one thing they all share is a human body and brain that can be very easily worn down when dealing with what lurks below. They can become infected and sick, exhausted and stressed, and experience unshakable fear of what they've encountered, which, looking at those rat people, is entirely fair. The scratchy, hand-drawn art style would look amazing bringing any one of the Necronomicon tales to life, but the fact we get something totally new to play through is even better. Disturbing creatures and all.
Press this advantage. Give them no quarter.
Frogwares clearly have a love and understanding of the worlds Lovecraft created. The secluded fishing town of Oakmont has been flooded, but it seems like supernatural forces are at work. So PI Charles Reed is asked to discover the cause of the darkness that is taking over the town. It's an open world, which means the creepy and intriguing island is yours to explore as you like, picking up clues and fighting off beasts as you do. It feels like a chance to step inside your favourite weird tales, talk to the characters, and encounter horrors that you'd rather leave on the pages of a Lovecraft short story. But don't worry, you've got a gun. I'm sure Cthulhu doesn't stand a chance against you or your shaky aim. Or that's how I felt until I was face to face with that horrid being underwater. Of course, there had to be some horror games on this list. You can't have Lovecraftian themes without getting a little spooked. Firstly, it starts with a missing writer, then a cursed song, and finally an entity known as the Presence. Many scary games could sneak their way onto this list, but the atmosphere and setting are what makes Song of Horror feel like such an apt fit. The clearly creepy door where we don't fully know what becomes of those who step through. The things that go bump behind the door but never materialize. It's an ode to all the times HP deemed something too terrible to describe. And often the best horror is that which keeps you guessing, rather than throwing the beasts right at you. Although that doesn't mean there's nothing scary to meet. So when something knocks at the door, maybe don't answer. Sunless Sea is a game that feels like it was plucked straight from a Lovecraft story collection. It's set in a Victorian-era London that has been abducted beneath the Earth's surface where monsters are the new neighbours. Your time is split. Some of it will be spent exploring the vast dark sea in a roguelike fashion as you try to push your supplies to the limit. Otherwise, you play through text-based encounters that can give you chills with just one image and a few carefully selected words. The story is what makes Sunless Sea so well loved. Incredibly well written and thorough, you're willing to travel a little further than you want just to discover something new. And just like any good Lovecraftian story, the atmosphere is there from start to finish, wrapping you up in its cold, wet arms and holding you hostage until you remember that this is just a game and you can leave anytime, as long as the darkness allows it. Big creatures and vast oceans instantly make me think of Lovecraft, especially when a psychological element is added in. So Sea of Solitude's protagonist, who grows into a monster through loneliness, is exactly the kind of thing HP himself might think up. Kay travels through a flooded, empty city and has to face the monsters she encounters in order to move on. Unlike other games on this list though, it's not all set in shadowy darkness. Instead, moments of light and beauty make the blackness even more terrifying. And it's that world you'll likely fall in love with, serene and peaceful at times, despite the things that lurk beneath. No matter how scary it gets, it's beautiful enough to make you want to explore more, step out of where you feel comfortable, and help even the scariest of beasts. So not exactly the theme of much of Lovecraft's stories, but maybe it's time we're able to conquer the beasts rather than run from them. From the title alone, this was an obvious choice for a Lovecraftian list. Set in the universe of all your favourite stories, Call of Cthulhu brings the most horrible aspects to life. In a good way, of course. Cultists, creatures, and cosmic-level creeps. It's down to private investigator Pierce to solve a tragic death and, as it turns out, a whole island of weirdness. If you've ever played the tabletop role-playing game of the same name, then you'll be pleased to know that this was heavily influenced by that, and exactly what you need when your IRL friends bail on the weekly session last minute. Don't worry, you will get your scares. As it's a semi-open world, it wants you to do the detecting and exploring yourself, so it feels very much like a classic role-playing game. It also firmly keeps all tentacles in psychological horror, so maybe you should check your sanity table before delving in for a longer session.
Someone has settled in here.
And whoever it is has something to tell me about the Hawkins case. Is there anyone in there? You! Don't move!
A game where the titular character is one straight from Lovecraft's mind had to join this list. And as we're still packing away the tinsel and finishing off the last mince pies, we thought there's time to slip one more festive game in. Cthulhu Saves Christmas stars the dreaded and most loved betentacled beast from HP's Tales, but off on a mission to reclaim his power rather than lying dormant in the bottom of the ocean. It also has more candy canes and winter-themed friends than Lovecraft probably imagined his creature to ever meet. But that's all part of the charm. It takes the most feared being from his tales and throws it into a very different, but at times, equally weird world. There is also a Cthulhu Saves the World game to play before, but we thought some final festivities might not be so bad. So why not face your fears all wrapped up in a glittery bow? At first, a historical trip across France might not seem all that Lovecraftian, but throw in swarms of rats that move like an inky river with one mind, and a plague tale Innocence starts to earn a place in the Necronomicon. It's story focused too, so for those looking to put down the book but not step too far, will be drawn into a new dark world where every torch is sacred. There's no way I'm stepping near that wriggling mass without fire in my hands. The game revolves around stealth, which is equally fitting as anyone who's dipped into a few Lovecraft tales knows. Trying to fight the eldritch terrors is never a good idea, even if they are just big mice. It may seem like one of the less creepy options to play, but be warned, once you really encounter those swarms, even a few steps forward will seem like a nightmare. So those are some of the best Lovecraftian games you can play on PC. Let us know what weird tales and horror games you like best, or maybe you're just waiting for The Shore to be your cosmic horror of choice. If you enjoyed, please give this video a like. For more videos on all things games, subscribe to Logitech G and hit the notification bell so you never miss when a video lands, or rises from the depths of the ocean. Best to be wary of those ones.